my constituents have a sense of disappointment with the failure of yesterday's budget to address many of the challenges that they face, and indeed other people in former coalfield and old industrial areas face. Taxes in the UK are unfairly distributed, penalising our poorest communities. Rather than supporting our fragile regional economies, government policies and decision making is taking money and resources out of our communities. Despite the headline cut to national insurance, data from the Office of Budget Responsibility show that the UK has the highest tax burden in 70 years, rising every year of the forecast period. Anyone living in my constituency in Easington on the national minimum wage, earning around £20,000, it's true they will receive an extra £148.60 a year, that's £12.38 per month, from the reduction in national insurance. However, we need to look at the overall tax burden. Around 40% of this extra income will be lost due to the increase in council tax. A quote from my own council's website, which gives some examples. Those living in a Band A property would be charged £61 more next year. This figure, of course, will be much higher once we add in parish, police and fire precepts, once these increases are added. It's a problem that's compounded in areas like mine that have a very low council tax base, where the majority of properties are in Band A to C. And indeed, even the additional money that the council is going to raise aren't going to cover the rising costs. So we are going to be facing cuts. We'll have to pay more and we'll see services cut. The figure, which I checked, Durham County Council receives £130 million less in revenue support in 2024 compared to 2010. Indeed, a survey by the County Council's network found that 95% of local authorities are increasing council tax by the maximum permitted 5%. In the case of East Durham, this means our poorest communities paying the most. There's an interesting example, Mr Deputy Speaker. A Band A property in Easington Colliery, for example, would face a council tax bill of £1,671. That's not far short of the Prime Minister's council tax bill for his Band H flat in Downing Street, which is £1,824. If the Prime Minister was paying council tax in Hordern, in my constituency, for a Band H property, his council tax would be £5,157.88. Despite having property prices significantly below the national average, our poorest communities and poorest residents, those in my constituency, are facing council tax bills similar to that of the Prime Minister. Council tax is a new poll tax in all but name. I often feel like a lone voice advocating in favour of a proportional property tax. But I shouldn't be, because in fact it would benefit 77% of UK households. Proportional property tax is a flat tax, a charge of 0.48% of a property's current value. It would effectively be an annual economic stimulus to the regional economies worth £6.5 billion a year, increasing disposable incomes of households in the poorest communities, those that don't enjoy the same levels of public and private investment as do those households in London and the South East. And indeed, the services that take up the largest part of Durham County Council's budget are adult social care and looked after children. Very important services, but it's my belief they should be funded nationally and based upon a needs assessment. These costs shouldn't fall on local taxpayers, particularly as we see a rise in some council and service providers effectively outsourcing those with complex needs by moving their people into our poorest communities. And if the Minister isn't aware of this, can I recommend he reads an article by the Express journalist. I don't normally recommend the Express, but an excellent journalist called Zach Garner Perkis if he wants to understand how councils in the south are gaming the system at the expense of my constituents. Far from giving our communities a chance, it's government policy, taxation and investment decisions that are widening the economic divides within our country. Through higher taxes and a lack of public investment, this impacts on the private sector's willingness to invest in my constituency. Of course, there are opportunities if we had the right investment and growth policies. We have large areas with derelict and rundown housing that would be ideal for redevelopment and the creation of decent family homes. We have a tax and investment system that holds back and deprives our regional economies of opportunity. We have a government that refuses to take any steps to address widening economic disparities. In fact, I thought that was the whole purpose of levelling up. There are other national issues that affect my constituency. The NHS, long waits in A&E, NHS dental provision collapsing. We've got oversubscribed schools, a lack of home-to-school transport, and schools in a poor state of disrepair, not only affected by RAC or asbestos, but some quite new schools actually that are built by disreputable construction companies that have fleeced the taxpayer. The Conservative Party's now had 14 years either in government by itself or in coalition with the Lib Dems and others to improve the opportunities for constituencies like mine. However, 14 years on, the problems our country faces today are just as deep-rooted and extensive as ever. The Chancellor and the Prime Minister say they're proud of their record. Well, I think my constituents have reached the same conclusion as many others, and they say it's time to put that confidence to the test. If this government has a shred of integrity, we should be going to the polls on Thursday the 2nd of May for a general election. The Chancellor's budget's lifted the lid on 14 years of Tory economic failure. Taxes are still rising, prices are still going up for consumers, mortgages are going through the roof, and the Chancellor did nothing yesterday that's going to change that. We need a government to rebuild Britain. It's time for change. It's time for a general election.